Hello, children. This is Grandpa Joe again. In these videos I've been making, my childhood and um, the abuse that we suffered. I wanted to make sure I clarified um, that, you know, my mother was as much a slave and a prisoner and was, as controlled as we were. I don't think people understand you know the severity and the level of control that my father had over my mother. And I've touched on it briefly in other videos, but I wanted to make sure that I clarified that because I don't want anyone watching these videos to think, well, why didn't their mom do something? We let all these things happen, and how could anyone just allow this to happen to their children like that? And understandably so. Just looking at it from a perspective of a normal person, that would make perfectly good sense. But this, you have to understand, this wasn't a normal situation, and the time frame in which it happened, there was no resources available to help my mother in any way. So, like I said before, I was born in 1967, and so my parents got married. Was it 2 years, 3 years prior to that? Okay, so they got married in 64, somewhere in there, maybe 63. So this was the mid 60s, and there wasn't anywhere in Indiana anyway. There was the small city of Kokomo. It was a manufacturing town, but there are a couple factories there. But this wasn't wasn't a large metropolitan area or anything. And most of Indiana at the time was nothing but farmland. I mean, both my parents, my grandparents were farmers on my mom and dad's side. Okay, so we lived in rural areas. So, and back then, like I said before in another video, there weren't any resources for women to get away from an abusive husband. And my father wasn't just abusive. He was intelligent, and he was extremely manipulative, and he was charismatic. And so people that met my father would think that he was a normal, healthy, happy, decent, caring person. Okay, that's the way he came off to everyone, as a very godly and upright man who was, loved God, loved people, who wanted to help his community. A person who visited the sick, and prayed for people, and wanted to see people come to God. That's the perception that everyone had of my father. And that's not who he was at all. It was all a huge deception. And it wasn't, those same things, um, that beguiled them were also, beguiled my mother, and, confused and controlled her. And somebody, the situation where you fall in love with your prisoner, someone's is kidnapped and is held hostage. They'll fall in love with their tormentor, and you know, that was sort of the issue here. There was some of that, but um, there was also a tremendous amount of fear. Okay, my dad was basically a cult leader, um, except the cult was just our family. So, and my mother had no resources, no recourse, and she, like I said, she reached out as often as she could to others, other men, other leaders in the church, not just of our church, but of other churches, right? Anyone that she thought that she can confide in, she tried to reach out to them to get some help. But no one believed what she said, because it was just so far removed from what they saw as reality that they just couldn't accept what she was saying. They couldn't believe that the person they knew, my father, could do any of the things that my mother said he was doing. And so, they saw it as something was wrong with her. My mother had some kind of, she wasn't right. She's saying all these things, about, her husband, and they're trying to figure out, what's wrong with my mother, that she's making up these stories about my dad. And I mean, that was a situation that she was in. And it wasn't just them, it was her family as well. Like I said in another video, my mom's mom loved my dad. She thought that he was just the greatest, okay? Because she saw him through the lens that he presented to her, okay? And so with her, he showed nothing but kindness and compassion and love, always loving and hugging and giving her, showing her attention and giving her little gifts and things like that, little gestures that he would do, and talk with her, and talk about how much that he loved my mother and he loved us kids and all these things. And then would turn it around and make it seem as if Catherine is, you need to pray for her because I don't know what's going on, but she's having some difficulties. I don't know if it's the attention that I'm getting in the church, but she's having some issues with jealousy. And so, what I mean, he would just make everybody believe that he was, that all the things that my mother said were just her imagination, or feelings of insecurity somehow, and that there was nothing to them. And as far as going to the police, my dad palled around with these people, okay? So he knew the local sheriff and the local police people, and because he would go to the hospitals and stuff like that to visit people, and of course the police would be there, whatever. He would talk to them and get to be friendly with them. The same thing here in Florida. The local sheriff in Florida was the same thing. Okay, so he knew the law enforcement, and some of those officers went to the churches that we were, would visit, right? So he was friends with these people. So they're not going to believe her either. Okay? And they would, she was also afraid that if she showed any abuse or anything like that, that they even then they still wouldn't believe her, that they think that these were self-inflicted, or that she had done things to us to make it look like that my dad was, abusing us. That's how sick and twisted and, on, how much control he had and influence was that he made it appear as if there was something wrong with my mother, that she was the issue and it wasn't him. And you know and every time that she just tried to leave, like she's going to pack us all up, and this happened a lot. She'd pack up the car and be ready to leave, and he would show up, and then it's starts off with a fight where he's slapping her around and stuff like this, and telling her that what do you think you're doing? You can't leave me. Who are you? You're nobody. You're nothing. You're gonna run off and try to find another man. So no other man that would have you. You're ugly, and all these terrible things. And constantly destroying her self-esteem. Okay, and making her feel like that she was just ugly and worthless, and that nobody would ever be interested in her, and that nobody's going to help her, nobody's going to believe her. These are my friends, they're not going to believe you. And he would tell her these things, and so it made it impossible for her to leave. And then and even if she persevered through that and said, I'm leaving anyway, then it was time to bring out the gun, and threaten to murder her and her children, and he would take out, usually a pistol, right, shotgun, and these were loaded weapons, and he would take them out, pull the trigger back, and point the gun at one of us, and say, you leave here, you're leaving here without your children. I'll kill them. I'll kill your children. I'll kill you, and so then I'll kill myself before I would let you guys leave. And so there was just no escape. And after a couple times of attempting to leave, and being threatened with murder, it was all that she could take. She lost all hope in ever getting away, in anything ever being better, and she instead focused on trying to protect us the best she could, and to try to make our lives as good as it could be when he wasn't around. Okay, so when Dad wasn't around, things were great, with Mom, and she treated us extremely well and showed us love and compassion. And if it wasn't for her, like I said before, I would have been a psychopathic murderer. I have no doubt in my mind that that's how I would have ended up, and likely have been in prison for the rest of my life. But I don't want anyone to think that there's any blame at all on my mother. She sincerely did everything she could to try to keep us from harm, and throwing herself, in our place on more than one occasion, to take in the beating herself, instead of us being hurt. But there was only so much that she could do, and because like I said, he would, if he didn't get his way, then he would threaten to beat everybody. I'm gonna beat everybody. I'm gonna beat you. I'm gonna beat the kids. If you try to leave, I'll hunt you down. I'll kill you. I'll go to your parents' house. I'll kill them. That sort of thing. And we knew what he was capable of, and we knew how dangerous he was, and we knew how insane he was, and how sadistic he was. But that was it. Everybody, and I mean everyone else, trusted him, believed in him over everyone else. She's went multiple times to people and tried to get help, telling them the things that he was doing, and nobody believed her. So when you're watching these videos, please don't get the idea that there was anything more that my mother could have done. She was prisoner number one. Okay, she was slave number one. She was the first victim of my father. She bore far more punishment and far more abuse than all of us put together, because not only did he beat her and threaten to kill her and those sort of things, and mistreat her and debase her and humiliate her over and over again, but he forced her to watch as he did those things to her children, with and knowing that she had no ability at all to stop him. Okay, so she is completely helpless and watching these things happen, and it has, of course, caused significant damage to her, and she feels responsible. And both me and my sister both have talked to her several times and tried to explain to her, Mom, we don't, um, feel any negativity towards you at all. We don't hold you responsible for anything that happened in any way. Okay? We were there and witnessed everything, Mom. We understand what you went through because we saw it firsthand. And we don't blame you for anything that happened. We don't hold you responsible for any of these things that happened to us. And all of this was Dad. All of it. And we know that you did the very best that you could. And we're thankful to you for what you did for us. That you didn't just, pack up your own stuff and just disappear. I mean, I would think most women would, if they couldn't save the kids, just leave yourself, and then hope that he wouldn't find you. It was just that it was that traumatic, that horrifying, and my mother deserves a lot of credit, not a lot of criticism, for what she did just to keep us sane and to keep us alive. So thank you, Mom, for watching out for us. Again, none of us kids for a moment thought to blame you for anything, except for that one time when I thought you were trying to break up the family by when you finally were able in a position that you could leave. I was still twisted up in my head in believing that you were causing a problem, okay, and stirring things up, when in fact you were finally putting an end, in a position where you could end all the suffering for all of us. So, thank you for enduring and putting up with all that you had to, in order to keep us safe, and for everything you did to try to make our lives as normal as possible.